Most of us don't learn about personal finance in school. We learn the Pythagorean theorem and we learn how to play dodgeball, but we don't learn what an APR is. We don't learn index funds or ETFs or IRAs or WTFs. And so it's helpful to have a rich BFF, someone who was a millionaire by the age of 27, despite the fact that she was not born wealthy, who is there to help guide us along the way. So welcome to the Afford Anything podcast, the show that understands you can afford anything, but not everything. Every choice that you make is a trade-off against something else. And that applies not just to your money, but to your time, your focus, your energy, your attention, to any limited resource that you need to manage. And that opens up two questions. What matters most? And how do you make decisions accordingly? Answering these two questions is what this podcast is here to do.
But the worst part, really, to add insult to injury, is after all of this happened, I'd had to get x-rays, I had to get bandaged up, I had to see a hand specialist the following Monday. I got sent a invoice that showed a total of $16,000 worth of costs for about a 6-hour stint in the ER.
That's an expensive sandwich.
Right. And I'm like, wait, $16,000, not to underplay what the doctors had done for me that night, but they shot some lidocaine into my finger to numb it out. I was given a, hospital grade level painkiller. I got one x-ray and, a resident, not even an attending, came over, looked at my finger and basically said, since the piece you cut off has no vascular tissue, we can't sew it back on. It's just, skin and fatty tissue. So ideally, given how young you are, hopefully this will just grow back. Your limbs are actually quite regenerative in your younger years. And $16,000 for that? And frankly, I wanted to learn about this space for just very shallow purposes. But I was very lucky in that my first mentor at work was the only other woman on the team and the only other person of color on the team. And I think she saw a lot of me in herself, and maybe she hadn't had that wise mentor coming up in her day. So she basically said, I'll be yours. And she took me under her wing, talked to me about why I should be investing in my retirement plans at work, or why I needed a Roth IRA, and why I should be doing all of these things to really improve my financial picture. And she says, don't wait, because she waited. And she was like, I was also young. I was silly. I wanted a dog. I wanted to have all of these fun things. I wanted to go out. It was New York. I wanted to be a young person in a big city. And I ended up having to put a lot more money away later on to essentially play catch up. She said, you have an opportunity right now to not have to do that.
Open a Roth IRA.
Do it right now.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah,
exactly. Speaking of PJs, you're from a Chinese immigrant family, and I'm from a Nepali immigrant family. And so, I think we have.
Are you Nepalese?
Yeah.
I didn't realize that.
Yeah. Nepalese. And so growing up, the immigrant parents, what we learn about money at home is it's all about scrimping and saving.
1,000%.
Yes, exactly. It's all about, you open the fridge and you see like 15 different, what outwardly looks like tubs of cottage cheese, right?
Yep. Or the salsa jars that have like rice in them.
Yeah.
Or, my favorite actually is the cookie tin that is actually a sewing kit.
Oh yeah. Everyone's got that.
Everything in your life is negotiable. And the only time you are guaranteed to hear no is if you don't ask.
Right. Exactly. And a lot of people, they don't ask because they think it's impolite. I think this goes back to the myth that talking about money is impolite.
Yep. But why would it be impolite? Because it makes you look greedy? Because it makes you look cheap? Those are only words that are used to describe people who don't have a lot of money. But I think of all of the rich people that I know, nobody loves free stuff more than rich people. And it's the funniest thing, because the people who could most likely afford stuff want to be gifted it, want to be given a discount. So I think, again, this is a case of like doing as they do, not as they say. You have debt because you're irresponsible. You don't know how to spend money right. You don't know how to budget. You don't know how to blah, 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 blah. That's not true. People take on debt for multiple different reasons. And when we see a single mom go to the grocery store and put food that she cannot afford on a credit card to feed her kids that night, we point our fingers and we wag and we say, how irresponsible of you. So financially stupid. When we see rich people take out tens of millions, hundreds of millions of dollars in debt, we call them visionaries. We don't even say the word debt. We call it leverage. And we put them on the cover of magazines. Because the way we treat people borrowing money, which is just what debt is, borrowing money, depending on if they have it or not, is entirely different. And I think that's not fair. Like that's a double standard. And I think we should talk about it in one way. And that way being a tool. It is a tool that is good, that can be used for good, and a tool that can be used for bad. And it is good to borrow money if you can get it for cheaper than what you can do with it. It is bad to overspend and purchase things that you can't necessarily afford and that you don't necessarily need with money you don't necessarily have. But it isn't black or white.
So is the distinction between debt on consumer spending versus debt on income producing assets?
Yeah, I think there is that differential, but I also don't look down upon someone who's using debt to make ends meet when they have no other options. You know, I think they are doing the best with what they have, with the knowledge that they have, and frankly, the resources that they have. I just think that we need to be a little bit more willing to look at the context of a situation before saying this is good or bad.
You have a line that really stood out to me where you say, quote, a purchase has value when we have more positive feelings about having it than negative feelings about not having the money anymore.
Yeah.
Which is such an interesting, like a great definition of value.
Yeah.
Right. And so how, for the people listening, when they're trying to determine if a particular purchase has value, you know, because a lot of people conflate cost with value.
Yeah.
In one way or the other. Some people will think that something is a great deal because it's cheap.
Yes.
Despite the fact that it's
got no value to them.
Yeah, exactly. And extremely low quality, or they don't need it. You know, it's I bought it because it's cheap. I bought it because it's on sale. And conversely, there are others who think that things are valuable only because those items are considered luxurious
and expensive.
Right. Exactly. So for everyone listening, how does each person personally know if something has value, if something can be that Prada bag, what it was to you?
You know, I think oftentimes these things that hold the most value and meaning to us are things that we've wanted for a very long time, that we've thought about, that we've researched. This is not a purchase you make on a whim. This is something that you plan for, you budget for. You are very deliberate and purposeful and thoughtful in your buying. And when you think about buying it, it's not fear. It's not, I might have buyer's remorse. There is nothing in the world that I want to do more than buy this thing. And what I love to actually do is, you know, the is it worth it equation. You may have heard it called value-based spending. I think a lot of people struggle with the value of $1, not because they don't work hard, because I've heard you don't know the value of $1. That's not what I'm saying here. I think people don't understand the value of $1 because they don't know what it equates to in their lives. But what I like to do is take the cost of anything that I'm purchasing and divide it by my hourly take home pay